Well, good weekend all. Ira Epstein with your weekend edition of your metal market wrap up. And this is where we look at the weekly charts to get a feel for what's going on. The politics going on right now, well, first of all, in Japan, the prime minister won a big election, big time. She called a snap election. She saw that she was getting nowhere in the lower house. They didn't have enough of a majority. Well, the LDP, her party, won a majority by itself. And then with the other parties that come in, it's just an overwhelming majority now. So she's going to be able to get her policies through. One of them is a reduction or elimination of sales tax on food. And they have an 8% sales tax, so we'll see what that does. That will certainly be a boost. But her other part of it isn't to boost up the value of the yen, so we'll see if the yen drops on her election. She believes that the lower yen at this point is good for the Japanese economy. It brings in business. Their goods are very competitive on the world stage. For China, not the best outcome. She stood up to China over Taiwan. China tried to make them out as the country you should stay away from. And with their people now voting overwhelmingly to give her the hand, not the thing that they wanted to see. Then the other part you have to worry about in the geopolitics is what's going to happen between the U.S. and Iran. Let me tell you everything I read over the weekend. I walked away with this. There is no scheduled date for a next meeting. That's number one. Number two, Iran said today, Sunday, through their ministers, that basically they're not going to give up enriched uranium. They don't like the idea that they're being dictated to by the United States what they can and can't do. They're not going to give up their missile program in any manner because it protects them. And they never mentioned the money that they give it to the insurgents, but you know they're never going to stop doing that, not as long as they don't have to. So basically, as I see it, the Trump administration has to come to grips with the fact that nothing's going to happen. You can either leave the status quo as it is, and as Trump said, he's hearing that they might want to even start their nuclear enrichment program. And while they throw out overtures, they being Iran, that they're willing to give certain things up, they want to see the sign of good faith that the U.S. removes the whole armada. And from the U.S. point of view, here's what I say. After the last round of war between Israel, the U.S., and Iran, we moved all our ships away. We tried to negotiate. Nothing happened. So it falls probably on deaf ears. I mention this not because of the politics, because of the impact. And that certainly isn't a bearish impact on the gold market. It is something that the markets have to consider. So as we look at the market, an area chart of closes on a monthly basis, you're up 5%. That's only the first week. When we take a look at an area chart of closes on a weekly basis, you really haven't backed off from the all-time high on a closing basis very much. When we look at a weekly bar chart, well, you certainly dropped huge from a week ago from 55.06 to this week's low of 4,400. So that was a big drop any way you want to cover it. I consider that $1,000 drop big, right? It's almost what it was. It was, to be specific, $600 an ounce. You know, that's enough to put you on your seat. Pretty big, at least to me it would be. So going from 55.86 to 4,400, $1,200 an ounce. The other part was in 1 week. So $1,200, that's going to get you shook up. That's 20% of the value. When we look at where the market came back to, it's the Bollinger Band. That just sort of stopped the market on this rally, but the pattern's still higher lows, higher highs. It's very bullish. You still have a market here that is fighting at that number, and in momentum, you lost the bearish reading. Now, was that the run towards the Bollinger Bands, and that's where it ends? That is what the market's got to dictate in terms. If the U.S. and Iran were to come to terms in some spot, I would say that'd be bearish for the gold market. Central banks still want to buy gold because they believe that it's an area that they should diversify away from the dollar. But if the U.S. starts attacking Iran, it's all hands off. You don't know what happens in the Strait of Hormuz. Anything can happen there. The gold-silver ratio is correcting, and as you know, on the daily basis, I still am going to say I don't think you're going back under that 43 to 1 anytime soon, the ratio. And remember, you were up here 104 or so. You got down recently all the way into on the weekly chart basis around 46, and you're back to 64 now. You could go to the 18-week average of closes. When we take a look at silver, I'm not as friendly silver as I am in the gold market. What gold has going for it in a lot of ways is central bank buying off of geopolitics. Silver doesn't have that. I don't recall hearing banks are storing away silver. So I can make an argument silver could be a bit weaker than that. And in the copper, the same argument holds. You have a higher high, lower low. You lost the embedded reading. Those two markets as industrial markets, if something bad happened, could weaken a bit more. That doesn't mean I'm bearish them. They're still over their 18-week averages, but I'm certainly not screaming, hey, go out and buy them. That isn't what you're hearing. In the platinum, it's the same thing. You got up and you fell under lower lows. So the gold is still, in my opinion, the strongest of the group. And in the dollar, the daily charts did just what I wanted. They rallied up in the dollar to the 18-day average of closes and have faltered there. They have not been able to move on. And what you're doing here is you were just oversold. You've gotten away from that. Now with these readings here, both in the 30s, you're no longer in oversold condition. Won't take a lot to get me bearish the dollar again. So I'm just sitting and waiting to see what the next events will be. Remember, at any time, you can move your cursor to the top up here to get our offerings off of our website. You can move over here if you're watching me on YouTube, or just go to iraepstein.com. Everything's there that you possibly need. There's going to be a lot of politics talked about this week. Let's see where that carries us in the geopolitical scene. I'm Ira Epstein. I'll catch you in the other updates tonight and in the morning flash update. You take care.